Something fascinating and potentially concerning happened in the intermittent fasting study we're examining. Participants' circadian rhythms shifted. Their body clocks literally changed in response to the altered eating pattern. Now, you might think this sounds neutral or even positive, like the body is adapting. But we need to think carefully about whether deliberately shifting our circadian rhythms through meal timing is beneficial or whether it might have unintended consequences we don't fully understand yet. Your circadian system is governed by a master clock in your brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which primarily responds to light exposure. But you also have peripheral clocks in virtually every tissue and organ, including your liver, pancreas, gut, and fat tissue. These peripheral clocks coordinate local metabolic processes with the time of day. Normally, all these clocks are synchronized, orchestrated by the master clock receiving light signals. But feeding is also a powerful zeitgeber, a time giver that can influence peripheral clocks somewhat independently of light. When you change your eating pattern, particularly adopting restricted eating windows, you're potentially creating conflicting signals. Your master clock is receiving light cues saying it's daytime, time to be active and alert. But if you're fasting during typical eating hours, your peripheral metabolic clocks might start shifting to accommodate the new feeding schedule. This can create a state of internal desynchrony where different parts of your body's timing system are no longer perfectly aligned. We see this dramatically in shift workers whose eating patterns are forced completely out of sync with light-dark cycles, and they have significantly higher rates of metabolic disease, cardiovascular problems, and cancer. The question becomes, when you deliberately shift eating times through intermittent fasting, are you optimizing circadian alignment or creating misalignment? The answer probably depends on what your eating pattern was before and what it becomes. If you were previously grazing all day and night with no structure, adopting a consistent eating window might actually improve circadian rhythm organization even if the timing isn't perfectly aligned with light cues. Your body appreciates predictability. But if you shift from eating during daylight hours to eating primarily in the evening, you might be creating circadian conflict. Some research suggests that early time-restricted eating, where you eat during morning and afternoon hours, aligns better with natural circadian rhythms than late eating windows. Your insulin sensitivity, digestion efficiency, and metabolic processes are naturally optimized earlier in the day. Eating in alignment with these rhythms might enhance circadian coordination rather than disrupting it. Conversely, eating exclusively in the evening when metabolic processes are winding down might force peripheral clocks out of their natural phase. But here's where it gets interesting from a therapeutic perspective. What if circadian rhythm manipulation through feeding could actually help certain people? People with delayed sleep phase syndrome, extreme night owls who struggle to function on conventional schedules, might potentially benefit from strategic meal timing that helps shift their rhythms earlier. People dealing with jet lag could theoretically use meal timing to accelerate adaptation to new time zones. Seasonal affective disorder sufferers might find that combining light therapy with strategic eating times produces better results than either alone. These are speculative applications that need research, but they suggest that circadian manipulation isn't inherently bad if done strategically. The concerning scenario is unintentional circadian disruption. If you adopt an intermittent fasting pattern without considering how it interacts with your light exposure, sleep schedule, and activity patterns, you might inadvertently create internal desynchrony. Imagine eating your one meal at 8 p.m. under artificial lights, then staying up until midnight scrolling on bright screens, sleeping until 9 a.m. with blackout curtains. Every signal your body is receiving about time of day is confused. Your eating says evening, your light exposure says afternoon, your sleep schedule says you're on a shifted cycle. This kind of comprehensive circadian chaos probably negates any benefits from having a restricted eating window. The emerging field of circadian medicine is revealing just how important synchronized rhythms are for health. Disrupted circadian rhythms are implicated in metabolic syndrome, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, mood disorders, and cancer risk. This doesn't mean that intermittent fasting necessarily disrupts rhythms. It could enhance them if implemented thoughtfully. But it does mean we should be cautious about cavalier manipulation of when we eat without considering the broader circadian context. Here's my recommendation. If you practice intermittent fasting, try to align your eating window with daylight hours and your natural activity period. If possible, finish eating well before dark and before your intended sleep time. Maintain consistent sleep-wake times that align with your eating schedule. Get bright light exposure early in your day to reinforce circadian signals. Avoid eating in darkness or under artificial light late at night. Think of your eating window, light exposure, sleep schedule, and activity patterns as an integrated system that should be reasonably synchronized, not isolated variables you optimize separately. The observed circadian shifts in intermittent fasting studies aren't necessarily problematic, but they remind us that when we eat affects our body clocks in ways we're still working to fully understand.